Okay, so good evening, everyone, or good morning from Tokyo. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to Harumi and Iona and also Mark for connecting us and inviting us to speak today. And our topic is probably a little bit different from your usual presentations, but we'll be sharing about an experiment that we've been conducting, bringing UX research and design to rural Japan. So before we begin, we'd like to introduce ourselves. So my name is Maxwell. You can call me Max. I'm a UX consultant, and I run a design consultancy in Tokyo called Wayfinder Japan. We mainly help international companies understand Japan, conduct research with Japanese users, and then adapt their products to Japan. I've been living in Japan for about half my life. I'm originally from Sydney, Australia. And in addition to my work, I've also been the co-founder and organizer of Tokyo UX Meetup, which is a UX meetup in Tokyo. We host events every month, also in collaboration with IXDF Tokyo. And from last year, I've started, along with John and two of our other team members, this initiative to host these UX workshops in rural Japan. So yeah, looking forward to speaking with you today. And John?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is John. I am a product designer from Edmonton, Alberta. Um, I'm currently in Korea right now, but I've been living in Tokyo for the past 9 years. This is my 10th year in Japan. I just happened to be on a trip in Korea, so but same time zone, no problem. So I've been in Japan since 2016, and I've been working at uh, a lot of startups, big tech companies, very small tech companies, startups from 5 people in the company to tens of thousands of people in the company. So I'm currently working as a senior product designer at PayPay Securities. If anyone has been to Japan before, PayPay is the biggest contactless payment company. So essentially, you can go to any mom and pop store. If they take cash, they probably also take PayPay. So I've been working there for since last year, and yeah, I'm really excited to talk to all of you guys and share a little bit about the workshop we've done last year.
Awesome. Thanks, John. So, as you know, it's very early in Tokyo and in Seoul. So, I'd like to start with a little bit of interaction so you can help us wake up and get more energized. So, we're joining you from, well, I'm joining you from Japan, and we're going to be speaking about Japan today. So, I'd like to start by asking of everybody joining us today, have you been to Japan? If you've been to Japan or are planning to go to Japan in the future, or it's on your bucket list, then can you please just write in the chat and say yes, or me, or yeah, or raise your hand or anything like that, just so we can see how many of you have either been to Japan or are interested in going to Japan. Oh, I already see quite a few yeses. Yes, yes, yes. One day.
Oh, this year.
Oh, this year, nice. Yeah. Well, this is not really a surprise. I was visiting. Oh yes, I know. I went back in Japan, so I know you've been. I was visiting Australia at the end of last year, and it seemed like everybody I met, from my friends to the people working in shops, everybody had been to Japan recently or was planning a trip to Japan. It seemed, and I see that yeah, most people joining us today are also interested in traveling to Japan, and this is reflected in the data because last year, close to 37 million people visited Japan, which was the highest number ever since records began. So you can see that there was obviously a huge drop-off during COVID, but since then, it's sort of skyrocketed back up to the highest number ever. And there's a number of reasons for this, but I think one of the largest is the cheap yen at the moment. So it's much more affordable to travel to Japan than it ever has been before. Okay, so I'd like to follow up with another question now. So those of you who have been to Japan or are looking to go to Japan, could you please tell me the cities or the main city that you've been to or that you'd like to go to when you go to Japan? Oh, yeah.
No,
Tokyo,
me.
Cuba. Oh,
You.
oh, lived in Kawasaki. I think, yeah, there's a lot of people with connections to Japan joining us today, which is really cool. Oh, yeah, for the conference as well. Ah, nice. So I think, yeah, quite a few people have mentioned Tokyo, which is great. And if you come to Tokyo, then yeah, you can join all of these people in central Shibuya, visiting the famous crossing here and take a photo here. I can see that some of you are also interested in going to Kyoto, in which case he'll be joining everybody here in these lovely traditional streets, again, with quite a few people taking pictures here. And I don't think anyone's mentioned it, but obviously it's very popular also to visit Mount Fuji. Climbing Mount Fuji, I think, is a bucket list item for quite a few people, in which case you can come and climb Mount Fuji with all of these people. But you will have to now line up uh, while you climb Mount Fuji because everybody else also wants to climb Mount Fuji. So as you can see through these pictures, whilst Japan is having the largest number of tourists that they've ever had, these tourists are causing over-tourism. So if you look at where these people are going, you can see that overwhelmingly they're traveling to Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto, which is sort of the golden route of when you come to Japan, you sort of want to go to those places. They're easily accessible by train, and they're sort of the bucket list, sort of famous places to go. But if you look at this graph, which has all of the prefectures in Japan, sorry that they're in Japanese, but you can see that the majority of these prefectures receive less than 2 million tourists, which is just tiny compared to the huge numbers of tourists that Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka are receiving. So this is becoming quite a serious issue, which also reflects the demographics of Japan as well, because Tokyo, is one of the only cities that is growing, and all of these prefectures are sort of losing their population as people continue moving to the bigger cities. But today, we're not going to be talking about Tokyo or Osaka or Kyoto. We're going to be talking about Shimoda, which is this little town, which is 2.5 hours south of Tokyo. And Shimoda receives less than 10,000 tourists per year, which is a far cry from the 20 million that Tokyo receives, and it's just 2 hours away. So today we'll be sharing about the Shimoda Design Workshop, which we held last year, which was an event where 20 designers from 5 countries came and spent 5 days in this town, seaside town in Japan, and utilizing UX research and design to help the town tackle their problems. So we're going to be sharing sort of why we decided to hold this event, the background to it, why we chose this location of Shimoda, and the challenges that Shimoda faces. We're going to share how we planned the event, what sort of challenges we faced, and then the content and also the ideas that the participants came up with before sharing some exciting news about what we're planning for this year. Okay, so to take you back to the very beginning, I need to introduce my meetup group in Tokyo, which is called Tokyo UX Meetup in collaboration with IXTF Tokyo. So we've been holding these events in Tokyo since 2019, usually quite casual cafe meetups or workshops, probably quite similar to Tokai as well. We have close to 1,000 members, which is a good mix of sort of international and Japanese UX professionals. And this was actually where I met Professor Tignal. He came to our meetups once, and so that was how I was able to connect with the Tokai team. So yeah, if you're in Tokyo, please join our meetup. But yeah, throughout hosting these meetups for the last 6 years or so, myself and my co-organizer, Ting, we were noticing some trends with the participants. So first of all, people really enjoy meeting up face to face for this sort of casual conversation. And as UX professionals, they tended to be working for companies where they don't get to speak with many other designers or many other UX people. And so they really valued being able to meet people who work in different environments and being able to sort of share their thoughts on their career or on any problems that they face at work. However, as I'm sure you can understand, these events are quite short. So it's just 1 or 2 hours once every few weeks. So it's quite difficult to build deeper relationships with the people who you're speaking to at these events. So from the very beginning, there was this desire to have deeper connections with the other participants that can't be achieved from just this one-off short 2 hour event. And then in addition to this, particularly over the last few years post-COVID, I've really felt that people are feeling quite burnt out and disconnected after working remotely for so long, spending all their time sort of looking at screens, and particularly within the UX industry, not having that face-to-face interaction with the users is creating a sort of disconnect between what they're doing and the sort of impact on the people who are using the services that they work on. And finally, sort of more generally, I've been feeling that, well, over the last few years, as people, all the layoffs sort of within big tech in the US, and people feeling that tech is maybe not creating as positive an impact on the world as they thought it was when they joined the sort of UX industry, is creating, yeah, this feeling of sort of disillusionment with the industry. And so in that sense, these UX designers, UX researchers who join our meetup are really looking for ways to use design to have a tangible positive impact on people, which is sort of why they joined the industry in the first place. So looking at these trends over the past 6 years, myself and my co-organizer, we were thinking, so overall, particularly AI as well. So AI and remote work, changing the industry, and we've seen that over the past 6 years, people have a real desire for human connection and purpose through their work. So yes, my co-organizer and I were thinking about these trends and thought, how might we create a program for our group members of the meetup? Because there's a great balance of sort of international Japanese people with lots of different expertise. How could we all come together and work on a project face to face that is a creates a meaningful outcome for Japanese regional towns? This was basically the question that started this initiative. And at about this time, I had the opportunity to participate in CAID. So I don't know if you've heard, but it's the Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design. And they have these summer schools, which is quite an innovative concept all around the world. And so I was able to join one in Italy, Lake Como. And I went, and it seemed very similar to what we're trying to achieve in Japan with this idea. So basically, we spent 5 days. Well, I traveled to Italy, and we spent 5 days in this beautiful villa on the banks of Lake Como. And we worked with Antonio here, who was running a rental bike service around Lake Como. And the idea was basically to help him make his service more sustainable using things like design features, and they would teach you lots of different tools in order to do that. So I thought it was quite an innovative concept, and it was very enjoyable to work with people from around the world face to face on a meaningful problem. So yeah, when I got back, I was talking to my organizer about how this really shows that it is possible to do something like this. And so it made us more excited to implement something similar in Japan. So at this point, we knew what we wanted to do. We knew that we wanted to bring our group members together in a regional Japanese town and work on something meaningful with UX design. And so the next step was to find out where should we hold this workshop. And as John was mentioning, and the both of us had lived in Japan for about 10 years or more. And so it's difficult to sort of identify with the perspective of international tourists and where people want to visit, because yeah, we have quite differing perspectives. But at this point, thankfully, my father, who likes traveling to Japan, sent me a message, and he said that next time he comes, he wants to go here, which was a very sort of randomly specific hotel that is about 2.5 hours from Tokyo. And it is in a place called Shimoda. And I'd never heard of Shimoda before. And I was sort of asking my friends, and they'd also never really heard of Shimoda. And I looked at it on the map, and it's down here. And the Izu Peninsula is quite famous, particularly for a town called Atami, which is a bit further up, which is quite popular as a place to visit for the hot springs, the onsen. And you can also go by the Shinkansen, so it's quite easy to get there. But personally, I'm not a huge fan of Atami. It has a beach, which is famous as well, but it's sort of concreted in. So as an Australian, I'm really not a fan of that type of beach. And so I was assuming that Shimoda would be just like Atami. And so I was like, okay, yeah, we can go there, but don't get your hopes up. It's probably going to be a bit depressing as a town. So we go there and we go stay at the inn. And when we arrive, right in front of the inn is this absolutely beautiful beach. And the water is like crystal clear blue. It's just completely different from Atami, which is just a little bit far away. And what's more is that there's nobody here. It's a beautiful beach. It's a really warm day. We're just a 2-hour train ride from Tokyo, and yet there's nobody here. Why is there nobody here? I thought it was crazy. I mean, but I never knew about it living in Tokyo for, over 10 years. So that was how I discovered Shimoda. And to tell you a little bit about Shimoda, it's a small fishing town, 2.5 hours from Tokyo, great access. It has great beaches and mountains, great seafood, and interestingly, it's the landing place of Komodo Perry's black ships. So I don't know if you've heard the history, but this is basically where the American Komodo Perry landed in Japan and forced the government basically to open up to the rest of the world and end their period of isolation. So it's also quite unique in that it has history that really resonates with people from overseas. And yet, despite this, it's really not very well known by foreign tourists. So why is this place not more well known by foreign tourists? I was really thinking about that. And so the first thing I did was I searched on Google, basically about Shimoda. So if you type Shimoda on Google, what sort of thing comes up? Well, the first thing that you see is the town's official English webpage, which is this. So you can see I love the use of pink and the word look here. But sort of overall, it's sort of lacking in terms of information and making it clear what the benefits of visiting Shimoda are. It doesn't really have information about where you should go once you get there and how it differs to the other areas nearby. And this was also reflected on TripAdvisor. So if you look at the reviews of Shimoda on TripAdvisor, there's some quite negative reviews here as well. And what's interesting about these reviews is that basically there are people who have come to the town, but then not had enough information to understand that there are beautiful beaches or mountains nearby. They've just come to the town center and got off the station and thought, well, this is pretty depressing because most of the shops are closed and it just seems like a boring country town, which it does, unless you go outside a little bit and see the nature. So this was already starting to give us ideas about how we might help the town with UX to sort of make sure that they can show the appeal of the town more. And so we researched more into what problems the town was facing. First of all, as with many towns in Japan, rural towns, Shimoda's population is decreasing significantly. And it currently is around 20,000, but it's expected to decrease to 10,000 by 2050. And it has been designated as at risk of extinction, which is something that the think tank has been doing since last year. But I think about half of the towns in Japan have been classified as at risk of extinction by 2050. So this is a serious demographic issue for Shimoda. Also, tourism is basically the main industry and has been over the last few decades in Shimoda, but the number of tourists is continuing to decrease, particularly with domestic tourists. The main reason why people were going there originally was for the beaches in the summer and also some festivals. But unfortunately, Japanese people are no longer interested in going to the beach, which is an interesting trend. But yeah, over the last few years, particularly young people are just not going to the beach anymore. Yeah, they don't have time. They don't want to get sunburned. It's tiring. It's expensive. So yeah, it doesn't seem people are fans of going to the beach anymore. And as a result of the changing demographics and the fewer tourists, there are a lot of buildings that are derelict and not being used anymore. A lot of the shops and restaurants are run by elderly people who don't have somebody to take over once they retire. And so many of the shops are just closed and are left as is, which makes the shopping street look quite depressing. However, with Shimoda, there are quite a few new businesses. Particularly post-COVID, a number of people have moved from Tokyo to Shimoda, and they've started their own sort of shops and restaurants, which are quite cool. There's not a huge number of them, but there's a few people who are really bringing back that young energy to the town, and they're really passionate about contributing to the town. So to sum it up, yeah, after visiting Shimoda, I was like, wow, this is the place. It has this great natural beauty. It's easily accessible from Tokyo. It's not very well known, and yet local government and businesses are really keen to attract more tourists. So it seemed like a really great place that we could experiment with to help with UX. So after this, we have the location and we have what we want to do. So we need to start actually planning this and sort of bringing it to fruition. So at this point, originally sort of myself and Ting, we ran the meetup group. And so we talked to our friends John and Haruka to bring them into the team. They were super enthusiastic about the idea, which was amazing. So we ended up forming this team of four of us to execute the workshop. Here we are. So the first thing that we did was to just test interest online. So this is sort of a new concept, and I wanted to sort of gauge whether people are keen on it. So I posted on LinkedIn, and we had really positive feedback from that LinkedIn post. We had a wait list where quite a few people, not immediately, but by the end, about 80 people had signed up onto the wait list. And we were expecting them mainly to be from our meetup group from Japan. But surprisingly, most of them were from overseas. So we had people from 13 different countries sign up and a good variety. So we had designers, researchers, engineers, PMs, students, which is really great to see as well. And from looking at the comments, most of the people were interested in how they could explore their interest for Japan by sort of going to Japan and then using their design expertise to contribute. So yeah, we were very pleased to see that people were interested. It seemed like this was a viable thing to do. But the issue that we had was that we had no connections to the town, basically. So how are we going to help them? We can't just come in from outside and say, "Well, we're going to help you." We had to sort of establish those connections and figure out how we can contribute in the best way. So initially, we were speaking to people. Well, I went and spoke to the people from the Tourism Association who were not particularly keen on the idea. And I think what we found was people who have lived in the town for their whole life, it's quite difficult for them to see the outside perspective of sort of what issues they face and also what benefits, what things the town has to offer, particularly for tourists. However, when we were visiting a lot of the different shops and restaurants, we found that the people who had moved to the town from Tokyo or from outside the town were a lot more receptive to the idea and more keen to help out as they had sort of fallen in love with the town after moving here. And they were really keen to share the benefits and the appeal of the town with people across Japan and overseas. So we ended up traveling quite a few times, I think 6 or 7 times, and building those relationships to show that we could be trusted and that we were really keen and we really, like the town. And so eventually we were able to establish some relationships with multiple business owners in the town. And so decided to focus this first workshop on working with those business owners to share the appeal of the town with people overseas and across Japan. So at this point, the planning was complete. So we had decided on the goals, bringing together passionate designers, and we've got a wait list full of people. We traveled many times to the town and established these connections with local businesses. And we'd also established some problems that we should solve because the local businesses, they had issues with tourists only visiting during the summer high season. Yes, and general issues with not having enough information about the town online. So after this, we're ready to actually execute the workshop. So I'll hand over to John now.
Thanks, Max. I'm just gonna say next slide and we'll move on. Thank you guys. So now that we have everything kind of planned together, we got the number of users. We have the team, we have the plan, and we have the demand to participants who actually, potential participants who's wanting to visit us. We launched the site publicly in May. We had that wait list ready to go, and our slots were filled within around a month's time. Which was way before the planned September timeline. So we're really excited to see that happening really quickly. So for next slide. So the application filled out really quickly. We had only 20 spots, and we had participants from 6 different countries and a lot of different occupations. We had participants coming from Google Mountain View, senior UX designers, to consultants working from Accenture India, and industrial design students from Singapore. So, as you can see in this graph right here, it was nice to see the diversity, not just from the cultural background and the occupations, but the experience level they have as well. We have students, we have, people who's been working in the UX industry for decades. So, yeah, it was nice to see everybody being able to share that knowledge back and forth as well, new and old. Next slide. So as you can see, I just saw some pictures here to show you. This is what the workspace looked like. It's right on the side of the beach. If you look at the next slide, if you look on the left of this workshop, you will see a beautiful beach just right outside. I cannot stress how much how beautiful it is to be working right beside this beachside. And as you can see in the next picture, this is right before we open up the workshop to the people at 9 a.m. in the morning. Just stunning. Yeah, we got amenities ready for them. We got some stickers, we got some notebooks, water bottles in case they don't have any. And yeah, right around 9 o'clock. In the next slide, you see, this is actually right around when the workshop started. They all filled in. We were kind of nervous that they would be late, or some people would drop out, but no, 20 people all showed up right 9 o'clock in the morning. And in the next picture, you can see that, yeah, this is how we started. We got everyone into four different tables just to get them started, ice break. And yeah, from that, we were off to start the whole workshop. So as you can see in the next slide, there's a schedule. It's a 5-day schedule for a workshop. It's a very packed schedule too. It was essentially from learning about the town to research field work, and then generating a design output in just 5 days. It's essentially UX, it's basically a design sprint, but crunched up and designing for real people. So you can see from day one, they learn about the town. Day two, they do a little bit of research field work all day. And then from day three, they essentially analyze and begin to brainstorm the idea for what they want to propose. Day four, they actually get a little crash course on how to design for Japanese users, as well as actually making the idea happen and pitch. And on the day five, they share it with our relevant stakeholders. So as you can see in the next slide, I'm going to move on to what each day happened. So on the first day, we actually contacted local guides and scheduled them to actually take out participants on a tour of the town. We then took them to Ryosenji, which is a local temple, to hear a history lecture from the chief monk. The Ryosenji temple was actually very, very important because it was the temple where Commodore Perry, when they came in from the black ships, they actually came in and started a conversation within that temple. So it was a very historical place to be able to learn a lot of the history about Shimoda. It was also where the first U.S. consulate was opened in Japan. So it was quite stunning. Just hearing all this history about this town that essentially I've never heard of until we started running this whole workshop. So it was very interesting. So at the end of the day, on day one, we gathered back into the workshop space, and we had the local guides share the first local guides and participants share their impressions of the town. And with that, we wrapped up the day one. Moving on to day two, it was time for field work and UX research. So our participants were divided into teams and asked to conduct research on the target users that they were interested in. We kind of briefed them on some businesses, shops, even hotels in the area, because we're already connected with these local businesses beforehand. So we were able to get their agreement to collaborate beforehand and connect with our participants. So as you can see in this next slide, one of the things that we did in our prep work was we generated a whole list of local businesses that our participants can go visit and ask questions and conduct their research. Because without this, it was really hard for them to actually connect with people. Particularly, one of the things that we had a lot of challenges at the beginning that we thought it was going to be a problem, but it turned out to be okay, was the number of Japanese speakers that were attending it. So we were lucky enough to have just one for each group, so that they were all able to, I think it was 4 or 5, where they were able to help do not just their UX research work, but do a little bit of interpretation and translations between participants who couldn't speak Japanese and participants who can. Because with the local business ready to go, not everyone speaks English. And even if they do, they might not be able to interpret everything properly to conduct UX field work. So with that preparation, with the local businesses, with the essentially interpretation and translation in hand, and the participants were ready to go, it was all matching up. So for day 2, the field work went without a hitch. Just in case, we also made sure we had a research plan, just a little template for them to get started, so that for participants who are not well known to UX research techniques, they were able to just pick up and get going. So with all that work, we're moving on to day 3, which is research and analysis. So with all the information they gathered in the first 2 days, the participants use the value proposition canvas to map out their research results and come up with solutions that meet the needs of our multiple stakeholders. So it was essentially office day. Everyone just crumbled into their workspace and just get started. Just to give you guys like understanding, we made sure we grouped every the 4 groups into varying diversity of experiences and cultural and background and language levels, so that they all kind of match in a way that I can teach you, you can teach me, I can help you with this language. They kind of cover each other. So with on the next slide, you can see the value proposition canvas. This is something I've only really used in school myself. I studied in industrial design, and I learned a lot about UX and strategic design back in university in Alberta. But it's actually really nice to be able to see this and revisit the canvas and see how participants utilize it in actual research. So it was actually very touching to see. On day 4, after all that work and analysis and research, it was time to turn the research and ideas into a viable pitch. To get the non-Japanese participant to get acquainted with designing for a Japanese environment, Haruka, UX designer who's been here for her whole life, and we held an interactive workshop session to give them a crash course on designing for Japanese users. It was less about how Japan is different and more about how to not let our cognitive and cultural bias get in the way of designing for users they're not familiar with. One of the things we used was the Erin Mayer's, if you guys have heard of Erin Mayer, the cultural map, she wrote a really good book on how to tackle this kind of situations. We use something called the relativity test, or the country mapping tool. As you can see in this tool right here, what we did was we compared Japanese cultures to our participants' cultural backgrounds, and to give them context on how it compares and how they might approach their solutions differently. With this country mapping tool, it essentially what it does is it breaks down how different cultures approaches things, such as communication, evaluating others, and how conflicts are resolved. As you can see in the tool, we ask our participants, where they came from, what are their cultural backgrounds. We put them into the tool, and it compares it to the predominantly a Japanese background. As you can see in the first line right here in communication, US and Canada is on the far end, where everything is very low context. If I tell you something, it's exactly what it means. If I say no, it means no. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, where you can see Japan is actually covered by Korea, but it's pretty much the same. On the context level, it's very high context. People will never say no to you, but they have a million ways to say no to you. But if you don't catch it, you don't catch it. So there's a lot of things like this where we kind of give them perspectives. They learn a lot about how to design for Japanese users. So with all that in mind, and with all that toolbox, all the tools in the war chest, they were basically ready to go and propose and generate their presentation for day 5. So on day 5, participants presented the results to our regional and local government officials. We also had a journalist show up and write about our report. We were kind of surprised. So we were actually very happy to see everyone joining us. We also had local businesses who collaborate with us, join us to listen in on the into the presentation. And after the presentation was done, we had a seaside barbecue, and we ended up wrapping up the workshop. Yeah. So you can see in this picture here, this is basically our stakeholders listening in. And after that, they kind of shared their feedback. On the second picture on the right, you can see the journalist actually giving a very touching talk about how her work actually impacted the presentation. I'll share that in a second here. But as you can see, we had a blast. It was just a lot of fun. After working there for 5 days, we're actually able to enjoy the beach. People were able to move back and forth during the 5 days, but it was just really nice to be able to utilize the beach and just enjoy, have a good time. And right before it wrapped up, we took this beautiful picture around yeah, it was just beautiful. Yeah. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the results and what our team presented. Yeah. So as you can see, before the participant joined us, we already have quite a bit of research done, and to make sure that our participants were able to, get in and get going, we gave them some of these problems, and they actually, use these problems to look into what kind of things they want to work on. So, things like, how might we make Shimoda into a more attractive location for younger families to visit? Or, how might we encourage tourists to visit during the off season? It is a beach town. There are off seasons. And then there are things like, how might we make Shimoda the place to go for beach loving tourists? So team 1, they decided to work on, they're targeting tourists with children, particularly foreign tourist families with younger children. So their research finding results is that the team interviewed, several, foreign families who were sightseeing in Shimoda, who just happened to be there, and they expressed difficulties in finding information about the town. Just like, as you can see the website before. They also discovered that there are a few towns in Japan that advertise themselves as being family friendly, but Shimoda doesn't really have that kind of advertisement. So what they came up with was essentially a English stamp rally for children's for using the children's town's mascot. It's called Peruni. It's literally a round penguin that the face actually resembles the city's logo. So young families can then use to follow the stamp rally to learn about the beautiful spots in Shimoda and discover local businesses and hidden gems. Yeah. Also, one of the ideas they proposed was to make sure they do better site search engine optimization of Shimoda, the town itself, as well as social media marketing, and utilize the mascots a lot more online so that they were able to get more awareness about Shimoda itself as a town for tourists with families to, they can actually come and join us. So as you can see in the next slide, this is them presenting. They were using the town mascot, parodying quite a bit. And as you can see in the next slide, this is the stamp rally that you can use. So essentially you just walk around, you look for the spots, and they will have a stamp ready to go, and you just stamp it. It's a little fun spot. The fun thing about this is the journalist that was presenting, talking about the presentation afterwards, she was actually the designer for the mascot from 10 years ago. So, we did not know this. We didn't anticipate it. So, hearing all these connections happening right at moments was very touching. Team 2. So team 2, they worked on their target is to encourage visits during the off season. The target is for tourists who are usually, mainly domestic residents. They visit Shimoda during the summertime in the high season. but they don't come back and during the off season. So the research findings and results is that the off season from essentially from September to February, where it gets colder, it's a difficult time for businesses to draw tourists in. So the team proposed measures to basically encourage summer visitors to come back during the off seasons. As you can see in the proposal, and their solution was that they wanted to create a system where summer visitors are asked to fill in a postcard addressed to themselves, and after that, they will be delivered to their home in the fall and winter, encouraging them to come back to Shimoda during the off season. So essentially, is like writing it's like a little time capsule for the future for yourself. And upon visiting back Shimoda, they can redeem the postcard they get, and they can get a candle. So it's a nice, touching solution to handle the off season of tourists. So on team three, they focused on the lack of English tourist information online. So they find that, as Max has mentioned earlier, looking foreign tourists, especially looking for, beach or nature destination, they don't really have a whole lot of information widely available. And when the information is there, they're not really easily accessible. So the research and findings is that no Shimoda pages online appear in online searches for Japan or beach, which is odd because it was a beautiful beach there, lots of beautiful beaches there. And even though there is an official page from the city, it does not appear on Google because it's not search engine optimized, and it does not contain the information that foreign tourists are looking for. So the team proposed a new website. As you can see in the next slide, this is the site before. Not only was it pink, it was also gray. I cannot stress how just absolutely stunning this site is. But we move on to the new site. If you can see, this is the site they proposed. Essentially, the site was modernized with today's standards, and all the essential info was easy to understand and easily navigatable. And our stakeholders, particularly from the city, they were amazed by the quality of the proposed solution. And the team only had a day and a half to generate all this. So we're only showing you a screenshot of 2 screens. They pretty much generated like all the templates ready to go. Local businesses just had to fill in the information. So it was amazing to see this in a day and a half. Lastly, we have day 4, team 4, sorry. Team 4, they wanted to work on a package, like a holiday package for our domestic and international tourists looking for retreats. So, there are no consolidated web portal for tourists to find information to plan the trip in Shimoda. So the team proposed an app that has all the packages offered as a collaborative effort by multiple local businesses. Yeah, it was an app. Yeah. So with all that, that was the whole workshop, what happened, and what the team proposed. But after all this, I want to give it back to Max to talk a little bit about the feedback and the learnings we had. Back to you.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, we as the organizers, we were also super impressed with the output. Like we had no idea that we were going to be, getting things like this back. So yeah, we were absolutely amazed, as were the stakeholders who participated in the presentations. So yeah, finally, I'd like to share a little bit about the feedback and the learnings, both from ourselves and also from the participants. So we were lucky enough to have a number of representatives from the local government join our presentations, and we were able to get some feedback from them there. We had a number of people who worked in the tourism department of the local city, and their comments were mainly around the fact that they spend all day basically coming up with ways to encourage people from overseas to come, like that is their job. But they never really have the opportunity to actually speak with tourists or with people from overseas with different perspectives. And so being able to hear people from around the world really thinking hard about Shimoda's problems and also the appeal that Shimoda has was super enlightening and refreshing for them because they really don't get to see those sort of perspectives usually. So that was certainly a comment that resonated with us. And we're also lucky enough to have the workshop featured on the local media. So you can see here, this is a news article that was in the local newspaper, thanks to the lovely reporter who joined us. and this created a bit of buzz in the town, which is now helping us plan this year's workshop. It was also posted on the town's social media accounts. So yeah, the town was quite keen to sort of spread the information, even though we weren't sort of directly collaborating with people from the town because we didn't have any connections with them before the presentations. In terms of feedback from the participants, they were overall very happy with the experience. They particularly liked that they could meet people face to face from around the world and yeah, create deeper connections basically with designers from around the world, which is exactly one of the reasons why we wanted to do this workshop in the first place. So that was super rewarding to see. On the other hand, as John mentioned, the schedule was super packed over that 5 day period. And so we did have comments that it was quite tiring. And especially when you think of going to like a beachside location, you think it's going to be relaxing, you can just enjoy the beach. But in reality, it was pretty, pretty hard to be making a website in such a short period of time, for example. And so we did have one person drop out, actually, because the workload was heavier than they expected. So that was definitely a learning for us. I've included some comments now from the participants. So we have this comment from Rachel. She said that the field and site visits felt like they touched the anthropology side of her that she had neglected since college. And the entire time she was working, she was thinking to herself, wow, if only this could be my job. I'm having so much fun. So this was such an amazing piece of feedback to receive. And yeah, also sort of what we were aiming for in having people really interact with the users one-on-one directly and see how they can help people with design and research. Next, we have a comment from Jasden from Singapore. She said that we reignited her passion for design and she's leaving Shimoda feeling refreshed, recharged, and excited to keep growing as a designer, which is again an incredible piece of feedback that we didn't expect to receive. But again, this is sort of what we're looking to do, is to show people about how you can use design and research in a really simple way, yeah, to understand people and solve human problems. And finally, we have a comment from Eric from the US. He said that he felt inspired by the impact that functional research and design can bring to real life problems, which is again very reflective of the goal of the workshop. So this was really, yeah, wonderful to hear such positive feedback from the participants. In terms of our learnings, we definitely felt that this first workshop was a great success in the sense that we started with no connections at all to the town. So we just liked the town we visited. So we were able throughout this workshop process to build trusting relationships, initially with the business owners who had moved from Tokyo to the town. But then throughout the process, we also managed to make connections with the local government representatives, newspaper reporters, all sorts of people within the town, which was really encouraging because it's very difficult to establish those relationships in Japan because you really need to yeah, show that you're committed in order to build those relationships. It was also very rewarding to sort of take this idea to execution in such a short time frame. It was under a year from sort of thinking about, oh, maybe we should do this to actually seeing it come to fruition. So that was incredibly rewarding. And yes, as you saw, the feedback was very positive from the participants, which was great. And also the output quality was, exceeded all of our expectations about, yeah, what we were thinking would come out of this. It was just absolutely incredible, really. And I was also really pleased with our team because I think we worked really well together and we had some, yeah, great diversity within our team as well, which contributed to the, yeah, being a success. Thanks, John, for the fireworks. Yeah, in terms of learnings, so you may be thinking, what's happened to the solutions? Well, unfortunately, as of now, they have not been implemented yet, but we haven't given up yet. But basically, what we discovered was that the city has very limited resources, very little budget to be spending on things like this, and they also have very limited tech literacy. So it's very difficult for them to, let's say, implement a new website, even if we have completed the design and all the information that needs to go on the website. So I'll talk about how we're going to work on that for this year in the next slides. In terms of additional improvements, we, as John mentioned, we had really most of the people participating were from overseas, and so they did not speak Japanese. And we really think in the future need to strike a better balance between Japanese and international participants so that we can obviously overcome the language barrier, but also encourage more cultural exchange between Japanese participants and international participants. Japanese designers are also really keen to interact with people from overseas. So yeah, we'd really love to create an environment where that is possible as well. And as I as I mentioned before, the program was super packed, and so we definitely want to allow people to have a little bit more time to relax by the beach in future workshops. Okay, so that's a bit of feedback about last year's workshop, but now I have some exciting news about this year's workshop. So first of all, seeing as we felt that this was quite successful as a proof of concept, and we definitely want to keep working on this concept, and so we're rebranding as Design for Japan from this year, and we're going to be obviously holding another workshop this year in Shimoda, and then looking to expand the concept if it works well into other regional towns in Japan in the future. In terms of this year, we're starting with a lot more connection to the town this year. And so there's a lot more potential, I think, of what we can achieve this year. And we've already been in discussions with the city representatives. Last year, we didn't have any connections with the city representatives. So now we've already sort of received support about the location of the workshop and also how we can implement the solutions, which is sort of the biggest issue that we had last time. And of course, yes, the local businesses who participated last year are keen to participate again this year, and we have even more who've sort of seen the news articles and seen the social media posts and yeah, are keen to contribute this year as well. And in terms of the 2025 workshop, so this year our goal is definitely to ensure that the solutions are implemented. And so what we're doing this year is taking the website idea, which was absolutely amazing, and the city government was also super excited about this. So this year's workshop will basically be implementing this. So we're going to have the participants create a website for the city to use, where all of the different businesses within the city can put information on that to share it with international tourists. And so the research section will be undertaken to, again, with local businesses and also with the people from the city to understand what sort of needs they have, what sort of information they want to share with tourists, and also to understand their tech literacy to ensure that we can make a system where people who even don't have tech literacy and do not speak English can easily sort of share information that they need to share with international tourists through this website initiative. And then post-workshop, we're going to be working with a local PR firm in collaboration with the local tourism association to ensure that they can actually execute this website. It's going to be made with a website builder, and then it will be operated in collaboration with these two companies because they have the technical expertise to actually ensure that it's going to run. And then financially, hopefully, we're going to receive a grant from the government, in addition with a local business owner that will support the actual operation, day-to-day operation of the website once it's been launched. And yeah, so we're hoping to do that this year and then actually have that that output implemented. And if that does work, we'd love to take this concept to other towns in Japan as well and sort of expand it a bit to offer sort of any sort of digital transformation or UX design solutions to these small towns to, yeah, help solve these sort of serious demographic issues that these small Japanese towns are facing through this Design for Japan initiative. And we want to continue providing opportunities for international designers to come to Japan, and not just Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, but these smaller towns as well, and yeah, explore their interest in Japan. We even had one person who joined our workshop last year decide to move to Japan and start working as a designer in Japan. So that was really wonderful to see as well. So if you're keen to join us this year, the dates are from the 15th to the 21st of September 2025. We haven't launched the website yet, but we will be doing so within the next month or so. But yeah, if you're interested, then please feel free to join the wait list. We have a wait list here. I'll send it in the chat as well. And also, if you're visiting Tokyo or Yokohama for tour, not Tochai, for Yokohama CHI 2025, then yeah, I'm planning a meetup group around that time. So if you're in Yokohama, then please, yeah, join our meetup group there. But yeah, that's all that we have today. I hope you enjoyed our presentation, and we'd, yeah, love to discuss and yeah, hear any questions that you might have. Thank you.